Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a video going over my SPR setup. Now, if you follow the other SPR videos around on the internet, there's going to be a lot of similarities between this and some of the other ones that you've seen out there. Basically, I got to watching the Hoplophile video on SPRs one too many times, and I decided I needed to do something like that myself. Now, in the past, I had an 18-inch 223 wild gun, and I wasn't really crazy with the way it was set up. And, you know, in hindsight, especially after having experience with these, there's a lot of things that I got wrong, mainly weight and what my expectations were for the gun. And I think with this, I have much more realistic expectations and have so far had really excellent performance. Before we dive into it though, I want to talk about why someone might want a rifle like this. And I guess in so doing, I should say what my ideas are by having a rifle like this. Basically, I wanted to have a rifle where anything between 0 and 600 yards, I can very confidently and adequately engage. Or at very least, be able to observe things at extended distances. So this gives me that opportunity. Why would you possibly need something like this? So obviously, there's a ton of different reasons. If you have a large piece of property and you're trying to do pest control, like coyotes. So for example, we're out here doing some long range shooting today. On our way in, I had a coyote run right in front of me. He went off before we were able to do anything about it though. Or if you just want to be prepared for civil unrest or any other possible situation, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to have a rifle capable of confidently engaging at those distances. Now, obviously you can get into that with a full-size rifle caliber, but I also wanted something that I could do with an intermediate caliber, like what I'm running in most of my other 5.56 guns. So, or my main go-to-war guns, which are in 5.56. So I have magazine compatibility, I have parts interchangeability, I just have a lot working in my favor if I'm doing a precision 5.56 gun. So let me talk about how I have this thing set up and what each of these components allows me to do. So we'll go ahead and start up front. So right now I've got my YHM Turbo K installed. That's on one of their flash hiders. That way if I have to shoot this thing without a silencer, I prefer having flash hiders just to reduce the muzzle signature, especially if you're doing nighttime shooting or low light shooting. With that, that brings us back to the flashlight I have here. Now this will look familiar to people who've been following the channel. This is the Z-Bolt Blazer. This is one of the Surefire compatible versions. So it is on a Surefire style body with one of their clicky tail cap heads. I figure if I want to be able to shoot at things out to 600 meters or 600 yards, I want to be able to identify things at that distance, even in low light or no light. And the Z-Bolt Blazer allows me to do that no problem whatsoever. PID at night out to about 600 yards, 600 meters, give or take. The light will go further than that, but PID is pretty easy at that distance. Now, obviously, if I'm shooting at that distance, I want to be as stable as possible. So I've got one of the Magpul bipods. Now, I know the Magpuls are kind of a love-hate thing when it comes to bipods. Some people really dig them, some people don't. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of them. I was taking a precision rifle class where there were some people running the Magpul bipods, and whenever they would go to front load their bipod, it would twist on them and the whole setup would be thrown out of whack. What I found out is that you can lock out that pan feature of them. And so once I did that, this is a lot more sturdy when I'm front loading it. Yeah, I can't track and pan across when I'm prone, quote unquote, but it does actually work fairly well doing that because it's being plastic. It has enough give that you still get a little bit of play. And other than that, you're going to be moving your body around anyway. The main reason I went with the Magpul is because it's really lightweight. And obviously when you have a longer gun like this with a bunch of stuff on it, weight is going to start adding up really, really quickly. This allows me to keep it a little bit lighter. The handguard I have here is one of the Midwest Industries combat handguards. This is their, I believe, 15-inch, because I should probably say that this is one of the 17.7-inch Ballistic Advantage Hansen barrels. Excellent, excellent barrel. This gun shoots extremely well, easily sub-MOA with the 77 grain Sierra Match Kings and the Federal Gold Medal Match, and that's predominantly what I shoot out of this. We'll talk about that more later. But excellent barrel. It's got a nice taper profile, so it's not crazy heavy like the gun I ran years and years ago, but it still lets me get the job done. So the handguard, looking at it, it's probably closer to like a 14-inch handguard. The Midwest Industries handguards, even though this isn't the ultralight model, is still fairly lightweight. And by getting it this length, it allows me to mount the bipod far enough forward and allows me to get a light far enough forward. So especially when I'm running a silencer, I can still get past that. And then having the free float handguard just means even if I'm resting it in a tripod or off bags or off a barricade, I'm still gonna get consistent point of aim, point of impact hits out at whatever desired distances I'm at. All right, sorry about that. Light started shifting on me, so I figured I'd move here into the shade. So the heart and soul of a precision rifle is gonna be in the Optic. Now this is the Primary Arms GLX 2.5 to 10. This is with the Griffin Mill reticle, and this thing is what really brings this whole thing together. With the last SPR build I tried to do, I had too much scope. It was too heavy, too unwieldy, and just didn't fit into what I was trying to do with it, unbeknownst to me. At the time, I didn't fully understand it, but this scope does everything I needed to while still being fairly svelte and lightweight, because again, I'm trying to keep this thing as manageable as possible to carry around if I had to. Now with the Griffin Mill system that's in here, I have the ability to range targets and also have some sort of BDC with those targets at given distances. So basically I have the ranging feature on the sides of the giant horseshoe. I've also got, going down that center stadia line, horizontal lines that match shoulder to shoulder on targets at those given distances. So basically all I have to do if I have a silhouette sized target, I can just move the reticle up until that horizontal line matches shoulder to shoulder and then crack off the shot. Now, because I'm shooting 77 grain Sierra Match Kings, the velocity in BC is a little bit different. So at various distances, I do have to take some of that more into consideration. But I also have my dopes written down on the rear cap of the scope here, and that allows me to still be able to engage those targets very, very confidently. Now, one of the other ways of being able to ensure I engage those confidently is by having a bubble level here on the body of the scope. So that allows me to make sure that the scope is fully level and that the gun is level to the earth before I crack the shot off. Up close, that doesn't make a huge difference, but when we're talking shooting out to 4, 5, 6, 700 meters, that becomes a lot more important. Any slight deviation, especially if you're dialing or holding high in your scope, is gonna make a big difference even left to right. Now, this part is maybe not something you necessarily need to have, but it's something I wanted to have on this rifle. And because I've got a pretty powerfully magnified optic here, again with a 2.5 to 10, that's kind of a lot if you're doing stuff super close. So I wanted to have an offset red dot. So I've got a Holosun 407C. I don't need the crazy fancy reticles in it. I just needed the dot in there so that I can transition to do up close stuff if I had to. That being said, even at 2.5 power, I'm not going to be as fast as I would be with a regular red dot, but it is still low enough magnification that if pressed into service, I can do engagements a little bit closer as well. Again, not ideal, but it can be pressed into service that way. Now I've got the scope here on a Midwest Industries quick disconnect mount. I'm a huge fan of quick disconnect mounts in general. You guys know I'm also a huge fan of Midwest Industries. The reason I like having a quick disconnect mount, even on a gun where I don't plan on taking the scope on and off all the time, is if it's just bolted down with screws or bolts, it could theoretically start working its way loose over time. The way that the screws are secured on these Midwest Industries mounts, it is mechanically impossible for this scope to come loose at any point while I'm using it. The mount itself would have to physically break in order for this mount to come loose. So basically it's just eliminating something I have to think about in something possibly coming loose on this rifle. Now, that being said, if I did have to take it off, I can say with some pretty high confidence that if I had to take it off, as long as I put it back to the same rail slot, I should have a fairly good return to zero, because I've done that test with these mounts in the past. I've just had really, really good experience with them. Now the red dot I have on one of their SIG red dot offset mounts. It's kind of a universal mount. You can use a bunch of different pistol dots. I just got the 407C because it's fairly cheap, but still good quality in my experience. Now, The upper receiver here is just a, I believe it's an Aero Precision upper, just something that I already had in my inventory in one of my random parts bins. And then the lower here is one of the KE Arms lowers. Now this is a different lower than I was doing in my What Would Stoner Do? The same style of lower, but it's another lower in addition to that. And I've been running this thing for a long time now, and it's been holding up really, really well. This one already came assembled from KE Arms, so it has their safety in it. And it's got a standard carbine spring and buffer in there. But I'm running a bootleg adjustable bolt carrier group in here as well, just to be able to tune things properly with and without the silencer. So that gas system still works just fine, especially with the can attached. Down on the trigger, I have a Geissele G2S trigger in this thing. The Geissele triggers are excellent triggers. I'm sure all of you are already well aware of that. But being able to squeeze that extra little bit of precision out of this gun is made a little bit easier by using a Geissele trigger or another high quality trigger like it. I just am a huge fan of the Geissele. It's just really predictable, very consistent, and 100% reliable because they've got the full strength hammer springs still in there. Now, all of that is rounded out with a Blue Force Gear 2-point sling, just soft looped into the back, and then I got the QD into the M-Lock hand, or into the handguard itself up here from Midwest Industries. And I should also say, for what it's worth, I know I've mentioned a lot of companies in here that I've done a lot of work with. Almost everything on this rifle I paid for out of pocket during the pandemic, so it took me a while to assemble this because parts were of varying levels of availability. The only thing I didn't pay for is the Primary Arms GLX scope up here that was provided by Primary Arms for me to include on this rifle, and it's been an excellent match. Again, your build is going to be made or broken by your optic, and this just makes it ridiculously easy to do what I'm trying to do with this rifle. So and also I should also mention, generally speaking, I'm running 20 round mags in here. Right now I've got a 20 round P mag. That is just so that when I am running off the bipod, I can still get low enough to be able to engage targets properly. So let's talk about what my performance has been with this rifle. So again, I'm out here doing some long range shooting. This is where we shoot out to about 1,000 meters. Now, again, not with this, but with my 6.5 Creedmoor, etc. When I talk about doing long range shooting, it's at this location. You can hear the other guys doing some shooting as we've been talking here. But I've taken this thing out here now on multiple occasions, different weather types, different wind conditions, and I can very, very consistently and easily make hits onto silhouette sized targets out to about 600 meters, so about 660, 650 yards, which is not too shabby for 5.56. Now I am shooting some more specialty ammo with some match grade ammo from Federal Premium with their gold medal match. And I know a lot of people are going to complain about that. Well, I want a gun that can do performance with the regular 55 grain. This thing will shoot 55 grain just fine, but what I personally do is every paycheck, I try to buy 1 or 2 boxes of ammo to go with this rifle. That way, when I come out to an event like this, I have a couple hundred rounds already banked up, and then I don't have to go buy a ton of ammo just to go shoot at long range. So I've kind of got a stockpile that's constantly being built up and depleted just to make sure that I'm maintaining proficiency. Now they're busting out some of the unsuppressed guns, so it might get a little bit louder here. But the scope has made it very, very easy. So we have, the way this range is set up, we've got berms every 100 meters out to 1,000 meters with steel targets in front of each berm. And then the way the field is set up, there's also just varying targets at unknown distances. If you're looking, you can figure out, okay, well, that one's between 600 and 700 meters, etc. But I was at a scoped carbine class with this rifle last year, and basically because it was an intermediate caliber class, they brought all the targets past 700 meters in and just kind of scattered them all throughout the field. And putting this scope against some of the other really nice scopes in the class, one of the things we had to do was engage unknown distance targets and also gauge distance to those targets. With the Primary Arms scopes, whether it was this one, and then there were guys in the class running just like the 1 to 6 second focal plane scopes, I was able to determine distance to target more accurately and quickly than guys running other brands of scope, and I was able to engage those targets more quickly than people running other brands of scopes. Honestly, that class is what really sealed the deal to me, that the ACSS reticles are the best on the market. There were guys running Night Force, Trijicon, Vortex. All of them were doing good, but they were slower at each of those tasks than the guys running primary arm scopes. So it was my first time really seeing apples to apples, the ACSS scopes against other scopes on the market, and the ACSS just set itself apart. Do with that information what you will. But by having this whole setup the way it is, it's still light enough that I could pack it around if I had to. It wouldn't be my favorite thing to do, but I definitely can still do it. It's still fairly light and handy, a lot of that being thanks to the polymer lower, especially if I take the can off. That takes a lot of the weight off the front end, making this thing a lot more manageable to shoot up close and quickly or from the shoulder. But just overall, I am really, really thrilled with the way that this build turned out. It's one of my favorite ARs to shoot currently, and it's, again, while I have shot out to about 600 meters with some of my other ARs, this is the one, if you told me I had to do kind of longer distance engagements with a 5.56 where I needed to ensure accuracy and precision, this would be the rifle that I take. Now, obviously this isn't going to be for everyone, or this might be more applicable to you than some of the short options out there, you know, especially, you know, we're in kind of central Oregon right now. If you're over Eastern Oregon or somewhere in the Midwest where you've got, as far as the eye can see in any direction, having a longer rifle makes a whole lot more sense than having, you know, a short 11.5-inch SPR. Where I am at in Western Oregon in the valley, there are areas where it's a little bit longer. There's areas where it's a whole lot closer. So, you know, something like this might have limited application there. Still can definitely be used, but again, depending on what your environment is, what your engagement distances could potentially be, that's going to dictate what you need, you know, because if you were to build an exact clone of this rifle, it would be a really good rifle, but it might not be perfect for what you're doing. Maybe you want a lower magnification scope, maybe you want a higher magnification scope, but for what my application is, again, absolute confidence, engaging any target 0 to 600 meters, this thing will do that no problem and has proven itself to do so no problem. You know, hopefully I'll have been rolling in footage shooting this thing out here today and, excuse me, on other occasions. It's just been a really, really impressive build, and something that I just had a lot of fun with, and something I've been meaning to bring in front of you guys for a while. It's just, again, it's been a lot of fun. It's something I really enjoy, and hopefully this might inspire some of you guys to get out there and do it. Now, again, I know this, like I said at the beginning, this was kind of inspired by the Hoplophile and Brassfax SPR video. I know that both of them have kind of gone through different iterations with their SPR builds. I know that, you know, they have varying opinions on how things should be set up, but again, they have different needs than I do, different applications than I do. For what I'm doing, I am infatuated with this, as I've said multiple times. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys run, you know, longer barrels, you know, 17.7, 18-inch or longer, or do you just prefer running the short barrels because, you know, you're perfectly proficient with those? Because really at the end of the day, no matter what equipment you're running, you need to get out there and shoot. You need to get out and prove it. You got to take classes. You got to, you know, put the time and effort in. You can't just buy stuff and expect the gear to do all the work. You still got the loose nut behind the trigger that's maybe going to make or break the whole setup in the end. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go and throw that in the comment section down below. I want to say thanks to my patrons for helping to make a video like this one possible. Like I said, everything here except for the scope I paid for out of pocket. Well, and also actually the light. Z-Bolt did send me this light as well, but everything else I paid for out of pocket. So that is made possible by the contributions over on Patreon. That's why we post all our content over there early. We have some exclusive content. We have a Discord server, all that kind of fun stuff. If any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely follow the links down in the description below. If not, I just appreciate you guys sharing and liking these videos, because that does make a huge difference in getting this in front of as many eyes as possible when YouTube is trying to stifle that. But anyway, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.